What's up, friends, and welcome into Fantasy Pros, the fantasy baseball podcast. I'm Chris Welsh. We got Joe Orrico in the house. In the last episode, we were talking about players that were rising in ranks as we talk about fantasy baseball in the early go. Now, who is dropping like bricks? These are 10 players that are falling in drafts comparative from 2025 to 2026. Some of them, it's pretty obvious. Some of them, maybe not so much. The whys, the wheres, the hows. Hopefully we're going to talk about all of that with all of these guys, some hitters and some pitchers. Joe, not hard to identify some of the very obvious ones, but this is going to give us an opportunity to talk about why and if we think there's any potential bounce back, as we did in the guys that were rising. Just because we're saying, hey, these guys are rising in rank, sometimes we'd push back on it, sometimes we would buy it. This is the same thing. Do we buy these players that are falling in drafts, or do we think that there is some potential bounce back? I don't know if you've already pinpointed a player or two that we're going to talk about today that you are going to be back in on.
Yeah, there's definitely a few of these guys that I'm going to be interested in. There's a couple that I think are falling for the right reasons because they're either old or they're no longer as skilled as they once were. But essentially a group of the guys who were disappointments last year, a big haul of disappointing players. Some of them still had some decent value. There's a 2020 player, actually two of them that we're going to talk about in here. But overall, these players were the guys that got that look. We're not mad, we're just disappointed. And that's...
Yeah. Just a little disappointed for sure. If you guys happen to be new to the channel, make sure you subscribe on the YouTube. If you like to do the podcast, make sure you subscribe to the podcast. And on the inverse, if you haven't jumped over, go to youtube.com/fantasypros MLB, as we will be putting on the big push for followers. And we always kind of have like a prize to it and a good celebration into leading off. So make sure that you're following on the YouTube channel. We'll have lots of giveaways into the season as well. And don't want you to miss any of it, as baseball is going into full throttle mode here at Fantasy Pros. So let's jump right into this. We've got 10 names that are guys, and we are using NFBC's early ADP, by the way. That's probably the most accurate. We actually have even dumbed this down to draft champions. I know you've kind of made a case to maybe only focus on draft champions. So there's like 26 to 30 drafts right around there that is kind of dictating it. It is not the be all end all using NFBC data, but what I do think is important about it is the start of where a lot of places are going to build their ADPs around, because there's going to be an initial, every website out there, we are going to end up having like an aggregate ADP here at Fantasy Pros. All of these sites are going to be based on A ranks, and they're going to build kind of this universal first ADP. And this is a really good early marker of it. So I'm saying all this to say, like, don't go bonkers about some of the numbers I'm giving you, because they're obviously going to change, but it's going to give you a really good range. So that is what we're doing. We are going to base this off of the NFBC Draft Champions ADP as of recording this episode. And I'm also going to be giving you what the aggregate ADP was on Fantasy Pros last season. So I've got both of those numbers, and let's jump into player number one of the most prominent players here. And it's a little weird because the next player we're going to talk about actually had a higher 2025 ADP, but this player has a higher 26 ADP. We are talking about Jackson Merrill. Jackson Merrill in 2026 on Draft Champions currently has an ADP of 66. So in the mid 60s. So that is going to be roughly, was that the fifth, sixth round, somewhere in there, depending what type of format you're looking at, compared to 2025's ADP, aggregate ADP as of March 27th of 27. So this was a second to third round player in drafts that has moved now to the fifth or sixth round. Really kind of had a tanking year. He hit 24 homers with 16 stolen bases with a 290 average in 2024. This year, injuries, missed time. Power did kind of bounce back up with 16 homers, but completely stopped stealing bases was Jackson Merrill. Batting average dipped by about 30 points. He is clearly falling in drafts. Do you buy or sell the fall for Jackson Merrill this year?
So I've completed one draft this season, and Jackson Merrill was my fifth round pick in that draft. It was a 15-team league. I was picking 13th. So at the end of the fifth round there, I think it was 73rd overall. I really do like Jackson Merrill, and I think we can chalk up a lot of his problems last year to the fact that he just wasn't healthy. Starting at the beginning of the year, it was a hamstring issue, and then there was a couple of illnesses. He had a concussion, another illness in July. His ankle got hurt in August. This is kind of what I was saying about Bo Bichette heading into last season, that you take the previous year, you pretty much have to just throw it away. There's nothing I'm going to take forward from this season, other than maybe Jackson Merrill was pushing a little bit because he was hurt. His swing percentage went up and his swinging strike percentage also went up. I think that was just him trying to compensate because he wasn't having as much success as he did as a rookie. And I think a lot of that is injury-based. He still had a 13% barrel rate, which was actually an improvement over the year prior. 43% hard hit rate, which was the same as the year prior. A lot of people point to the stolen bases, and again, I think it's just injury-based. His sprint speed was still in the 79th percentile. It was 81st percentile in 2024. So again, we're talking about such a young guy here. He's 22 years old still. People might say, oh, Jackson Merrill, he showed us he's not really that great. I would argue this was entirely injury-based, and Jackson Merrill probably still should be a third or fourth round player, but you're getting him in the fifth or sixth.
Yeah, this is a unique one where we're kind of talking about the negative that this player's falling in drafts, and I buy the fall, but this is why I would buy Jackson Merrill, because the cost is there's a lot more upside. You could argue in 2025, based on what he had done, he wasn't even a 2020 player. There was good batting average, that, that second to third round cost, how much more upside, how much more value had you already eaten up most of the equity that you could have in Jackson Merrill? So you're buying him at cost. So that question happens to be, well, what does he need to do to A, return cost, and B, beat it? Now this year, that question I think is a much more open-ended one. If he's going into the 60s, there's a lot of potential in there, especially if you do believe that the hamstring and the leg injuries and whatnot were keeping him from stealing bases, and he can return to form. I'm kind of with you. He barreled the ball up more. Launch angle sweet spots, it's a really kind of weird, odd. Sometimes you look at some of these stats on Baseball Savant, and you're like, what the hell does that even do for you? What is unique about that, I've always called that the Mookie Betts stat, because that is one where Mookie doesn't always, jump off the board. Not this current version of Mookie, the old one, didn't jump off the board with like crazy hard hit numbers or, crazy barrel numbers or anything like that. But what he always did is he'd get the ball in the air, and launch angle sweet spot was, his ability to hit the ball, to get it in the air. And you would see some of those guys pull it. He doesn't necessarily pull the ball, but he's one of the most elite launch angle sweet spots. He raised his launch angle. He raised his hard hit rate. He walked a bit more. And I think I agree with you. There's a little bit of like throw the season out, but now you get him at a really good cost. So he is falling down drafts, and there is risk because of how he tanked last year. And if he becomes a 20 homer, 5 stolen base guy with a 270 average, he doesn't even recoup the value into the 60s. So there is potential, and this is why he's falling down. But with so many injuries, a solid hitting profile, he hit better on the road, and he kind of equally hit the same on both sides of the first and second half. I think I'm a buyer as well, regardless of the fall that he's having in drafts. Now, the next player that's falling in drafts year over year, he went higher than Jackson Merrill last year, and now he's going lower this season. His 2026 draft champions ADP is 70. He was going 22nd last year. So that is easy second round pick in whatever format you're playing in. It's Jarren Duran. Jarren Duran, another one of those guys. He kind of fell into the same camp of like, I think a lot of people were like, who do you like, Jarren Duran or do you like Jackson Merrill? The bat kind of fell apart a little bit this past year, and there's some trade rumors that are flowing out there as well. What do you think about Jarren Duran's fall? Do you buy it? Do you sell it after a 16 homer, 24 stolen base, and a about 30-point batting average crater this past season? He's falling. You buy or sell?
I think he's a reasonable buy still. I think that we may have overestimated the demise of Jarren Duran a little bit. He was the 19th ranked outfielder last season, which is still very good. He didn't recoup the second round value, but he still gave you a lot of production. 86 runs, 84 ribbies. The batting average, 256, is not what you were hoping for, but it didn't kill you. And when you look below the surface, the barrel rate went from 9.3 to 9.7, hard hit from 44 to 47%. There's not a lot that I can look at to say that he's a completely different guy than he was last year. If anything, I think maybe we were overestimating his abilities last year because of one massive season that he had in 2024. I think this is where he probably should be going, is a 5th, 6th round type of player, 15 homers, maybe 30 stolen base, 25 to 30 stolen bases. And even if he does hit 260 again, which I'm not even conceding because he was 295, 285 in the years past, even if it's 260, it's not really hurting you so much with all the counting stats that he provides in Boston. A lot of talk about he's going to get traded. Don't really see it necessarily. He's still a very valuable player. We've been hearing trade rumors for like a year now. Maybe he does get traded, but have to assume he's in Boston at this point. And if he is, He's a volume guy who does a lot for you in 5 categories.
Yeah, and I think the piece of knowledge is to know that Jarren Duran has fallen year over year in drafts, and he is nowhere close to where he was last year in the perception and whatever that value is. So then it turns to us giving you that information to saying, are you interested? I think I am interested, kind of like Jackson Merrill. The things uniquely that stand out are the uptick in hard hit. I mean, he had a max EV of 117, which was like the top 1 percentile of the league. That also was an increase of his average exit velocity by a full mile per hour. Now, what I like about those two things are he increased his bat speed by a full mile per hour. You're getting into like an elite territory from 73.6 to 74.8. So he's swinging the bat faster. While doing so, there's a very interesting stat on Baseball Savant that I think you can't singularly look at, but you can start to pair it with guys that barrel the ball and hit the ball hard. It is called ideal attack angle. And though it is still not great, he improved his ideal attack angle while hitting the ball harder. I think there's an adjustment period that ends up happening. And to be honest with you, maybe this new version of, I swing the bat harder, I hit the ball harder, I'm changing my attack angle. Maybe that's going to kill his ability to be a 285, 295 hitter who he was. But I do think there's a possibility that, as a 260 or 270 hitter, he could become a 30-30 guy, a 20-20 guy. My concern, I'm going to throw out there, he hit only like 220 on the road versus around 280 at home. So last season, the exact number was 227 on the road, 289 at home. So if he were to be traded, is there a road split and a new destination that could affect him negatively? That is definitely a possibility. But the cost is really low. He has fallen in drafts. Maybe he's someone that you're going to have interest in, and he is way more palatable. And like Jackson Merrill, both of those guys, the equity of the upside, much more realistic now compared to these lofty expectations we had last season. We've got a bunch more. We've got some pitchers that are coming up soon. We've got 2 very popular, polarizing outfielders that are coming up here in just a minute. But we want to tell you, this show today is brought to you by our sponsor, Hard Rock Bet. If you haven't tried your first bet on Hard Rock Bet, there's still time for you to get $150 in bonus bets if you win. Just place a $5 bet, and if it hits, you'll not only get your winnings, but $150 in extra bonus bets. Download the Hard Rock Bet app and make your first deposit today. All right, polarizing. I mentioned there's some players that bring big topics of discussion. Usually that's hate or love, all in or all out. But there's no denying that Oneil Cruz is on his way down after this past season. He had an ADP, O'Neil did, of 41 the year before, according to the aggregate FantasyPros ADP. He has now fallen down to 75. He also kind of floats around, by the way, in different spaces. Like, it's not uncommon for him to have gone maybe into the 70s in some spots, but the perception has changed because the year prior, Joe, he had hit 259, 21 homers, 22 stolen bases. I was always a big proponent of him. I'm like, oh my gosh, the barrel percentage is up. The strikeouts, they could potentially be down. He's hitting the ball harder. Well, guess what? Better barrel percentage this year, better average exit velocity, better max EV. He hit 123 miles per hour. His hard hit rate was about the same. He walked more, but he hit 200. He had 20 homers, 38 stolen bases. He had a sub 300 OBP, and he hit 200. He is falling down drafts because the batting average now looks like something that is not, it's not repairable. So do you buy this fall in drafts? Do you think he should fall more, or do you think he's someone that you're going to be picking up?
He's incredibly polarizing because the range is pick 25 was the highest he was picked. 25. 115 is the latest, based on what I'm looking at here. Might have even slipped later if you're not playing on the NFBC. I'm going to say something that's probably going to annoy a lot of people here. Oneil Cruz is not a good baseball player. He is not a good baseball player. And I think the comp is honestly Luke Voit as a hitter. He's very similar in terms of, he hits the crap out of the ball. In fact, Oneil Cruz had the highest average exit velocity in Major League Baseball last year. It only takes you so far when you're hitting everything on the ground. 48% ground ball rate after 47, 44, 49. That's who he is. He chases a decent amount, but he swings and misses a lot wherever the pitches are. 13% swinging strike rate, 15% last year. The batting average is always going to be a problem. And I think the power, even though yeah, like he hits the ball as hard as anybody in the world, but he's going to be a 20 home run guy if he doesn't elevate. And we haven't seen any improvement. And it's been almost 400 games, 1,500 plate appearances. Offensively, I think that he is turning into a Luke Voit type. And Luke Voit was able to elevate the ball a little bit more, played first base as opposed to the outfield. And you'll say, Joe, well, he's an outfielder. He's a lot more valuable than a guy like Luke Voit was. Oneil Cruz had -9 defensive runs saved as a shortstop in 2024. In the outfield, -14 defensive runs saved, -14. He's not doing it on either side of the ball. I think there is a world where Oneil Cruz is not even in Major League Baseball 2 or 3 years from now if he doesn't seriously change things. Look at Voit. Voit won the home run title, and he's playing in Korea 2 years later. And I think that Oneil Cruz is headed in that direction without some serious changes.
So it's fair to say that you don't think he's fallen enough.
I wouldn't touch him. I wouldn't touch him in the top 150 picks.
So I don't think he's fallen enough. So this is going to be the opposite. The first two guys were like, yeah, hey, these guys have fallen, but we think there's still some equity. As a resident Oneil Cruz proponent, I don't think he's fallen enough. A guy hitting 200 with some of the things in his profile, a 32% K percentage. He hit like 100 against lefties. I mean, there's a case that he should be platooned here. He cannot be inside the top 100. But I do think there's still potential for improvement. The way he hits the ball, with the impact of how his bat to ball skills is when making impact, is absolutely elite in baseball. He also is an elite sprint speeds guy. I mean, there was a point where he's leading the league in stolen bases at 38. Also, if you look at his BABIP, part of this is going to be the ground ball thing. But the year prior, he had a 347 BABIP. 262 this past year, 80 points lower. So if there's some positive regression on that side of his game, you can see the batting average tick up. His XBA was actually 220, so it is 20 points higher, but you're just not going to be a serviceable fantasy guy at 220. You truly cannot be a fantasy target inside the top 100 when you're hitting at that level. So he deserves to fall. He should not be in this range. But I do think the skill set, there's the potential for improvement. He underperformed against off-speed pitches. He stopped pulling the ball in the air. If he can pull the ball a little bit more, get it back in the air, and even lower his K percentage to 28%, don't be surprised that he's now a 240 hitter. And if he's hitting 25 homers with 40 stolen bases, he is viable, but not at this cost. So he does deserve to be lower. I'm obviously more of an Oneil guy than you. You say he's going to be out of baseball in a couple years, but he can't go inside the top 100.
If he doesn't start raising that ball, he could hit it 200 miles an hour. If it's on the ground every time, it's not helping anybody.
I do like that. 200 miles an hour is not going to help. I mean, 200 might help him a little bit. He might need to start hitting at 200 miles an hour, and then we could find some improvement. From one polarizing player to another, this is the Joe Pisapia special. Michael Harris. Michael Harris gets lots of conversation because he last year was a top 50 guy. His FantasyPros aggregate ADP across multiple sites right before the season started was 49. So top 50 player. This year, he is barely inside the top 100. The draft champions ADP is 96. So he just sneaks in. He actually improved on his counting stats this past year. The year prior, 16 homers, 10 stolen bases with a 264 average. He was a 2020 guy this year, and it was a big improvement, I believe, in the second half, because let me get the actual numbers. Yeah, he hit 210 in the first half, 299 in the second half. In 264 at-bats, he hit 14 homers in the second half. So that's where it all came to. A lot of his profile, honestly, almost looks absolutely identical. His XBA is a little bit higher, but he's falling in drafts. Is this a proper fall? Do you think he should fall more? And is he someone you're interested in? Michael Harris.
The differentiating factor with him and Oneil Cruz, because they are very similar in terms of the profile, is that Michael Harris will hit you 240, 250. Even if there are some shortcomings in him as a hitter, he chases, we could probably get him to chase Welsh if we threw even a half decent pitch. He chases 42% of the time. Only Yainer Diaz has a higher O-swing chase rate in all of baseball. But he's shown us that the floor, at least, if he plays, most of a season, is around 2020. And even this past year, he hit 250. So even though this was a horrible bottoming out season for him, 9% barrel rate, 43% hard hit, 2020 season, only a 12% swinging strike rate, which isn't terrible. I'm willing to buy back in, and I'm willing to have egg on my face here as well, because there's definitely a possibility that he is just not as great as we were thinking initially. But if you're getting him around pick 100, somewhere in that range, 980 to 100, I think it is worth it for the hope that he can play a whole season, rebound to a 25-25 guy. Been saying it for 3 years now. I feel like I'm hitting my head against the wall, but the Braves should have a better offensive season in 2026 than what we've seen the last couple of years. Healthy Acuna, Albies bounce back, etc. I think he's a solid pick. And I differentiate with Cruz because the batting average is actually projectably decent.
I think this is like the most proper porridge of all of them, where it's like, this one's too hot, this one's too cold, this one is just about right. Like, I think we both see that there's equity to be had in Duran and Merrill. Oneil Cruz is like laughably not in the right spot where he should be. Michael Harris, this is just about where it should be. Like, I love the huge rebound in the second half of the year. The problem is we got to stop having streaky Michael Harris, whether it's injuries or having like extreme Justin Upton type halves. Like, we need to have a little bit more consistency with him. A 2.5% walk rate is like laughable. Like, you got to get on base. He's got to learn to walk more. At least he didn't pair it with more strikeouts. His expected batting average is quite a bit higher than where he was. He hit 249 with an XBA of 272. Part of that is because he massively underperformed against fastballs. He hit 253, expected 294, and it's a pretty good floor against off-speed and breaking pitches, essentially 250. That's a really good, well-rounded hitter. And I think you can take the optimism of how he finished the year. You can look at some of the hard hit numbers. You can look at him becoming an all-around hitter, and you can just pray to God he can walk a little bit more. I think this is about right. This is about right for a volatile, streaky 2020 guy that doesn't have much upside after that, right around 100. So he has fallen in drafts to a range that makes sense. And sometimes that's all you're asking for, especially whether you believe or not the upside.
Sorry to interrupt you. Sorry, but especially for Roto, right? Because if you're head-to-head player, trying to predict which week of the year Michael Harris is going to go off, that's when you're going to go crazy. In Roto, if he finishes 2020, you don't really care if it comes in April or August, right?
Absolutely. We've got pitchers. We've only been talking about hitters. As a matter of fact, we've got a group of pitchers, and then I think the two biggest names that have fallen so dramatically that will shock people if you're not heavy in the baseball streets, or at least you're just going to be like, oh, maybe it won't shock, but maybe it'll be like, oh, this is where we're at. We've got pitchers. We've got those two players. But before we do, we've got championships to win. And championships, they're won at the draft. And that's where FantasyPros MLB Draft Wizard gives you the edge. You can sync your league in seconds and run realistic mock drafts using your exact league settings. Our tools show you who you should take next. The odds your favorite players will still be on the board, and a ton more. And guess what? If you're in a pinch, you can ask Coach in real time to get advice tailored to your specific draft. Plus, you can view player cards, projections, and build your own tiered cheat sheets. Draft like a pro with FantasyPros MLB Draft Wizard at fantasypros.com/MLB Draft Wizard. That's fantasypros.com/MLB Draft Wizard. Moving to some pitchers. Yes, they have fallen. Sometimes they're the big targets for a lot of people, but we've got a handful of pitchers that have fallen in drafts for good or for worse, for better or for worse. Let's see what your take on it is. Coming in at number 5 of players that have fallen, Pablo Lopez. Pablo Lopez is going 136 as we're doing this, so just call it the mid 130s in drafts so far this season. After last year, going inside the top 65. He actually had an aggregate ADP of 63, according to our site's ADP over on Fantasy Pros, aggregated all together. Pablo Lopez, not a great season due to injury, but I mean, statistically, if you pay attention to ERA, it was better. He had a 4.08 ERA in 2024, 185 innings. And to be frank, Pablo Lopez, I mean, he had like some stability. He had 3 straight seasons of 180 innings or more. But this past season, he only had 75 innings pitched. He had a 1.1 whip and a 2.74 ERA. Again, those are better than any previous year if you're looking at it from a surface level. But his K percentage dropped, his walk percentage was up. Expected ERA tells a different story. He got hit harder and he missed a bunch of time. And that has all led to him cratering in ADP and value. Do you think this is the proper range for him, or do you think you're going to be looking a little bit higher, or is he just off your board altogether?
I don't think it's a terrible price, but I'm a little bit concerned because he didn't end the season healthy, and that's always a red flag. And granted, he got hurt like a week out from the season ending, but it was a forearm strain. And forearm strains are usually precursors to elbow problems. I was going back and I was reading some articles last night and this morning in preparation for this, and they described it as a mild mid-forearm strain, and there's no concern about the UCL or the elbow being damaged at that point. They mostly shut him down because the season was about to be over and the Twins were not playing for anything. It still doesn't give me a great feeling, especially as he's about to hit that awful birthday that I've got coming around the bend in a couple of years myself. He'll be 30. And his strikeout rate is not what it once was either. 23%, it was 25, 29, 27%. I'm not sure if that is something that maybe was injury based. He had a shoulder problem earlier in the season before the forearm popped up. So I'm a little bit concerned about what kind of volume we can expect. You mentioned that he had been a workhorse. Not 100% sure what I would expect in terms of volume. Steamer has 182 innings on him. I'd probably take the under. But the real part that makes me hard to draft him this year is I really love this range that he's going in for other pitchers. We did a whole segment in Arizona and even on the last show talking about a lot of these guys. Cam Schlittler, Jacob Mizorowski, Chase Burns, even Nick Lodolo. I really like Bieber, Emmett Sheehan, etc. They're all going in that same range where Pablo Lopez is going. So you're likely passing up on one of those guys who could be this year's breakout. Mizorowski, Burns, Savage, etc. You are passing up on one of those young guns for Lopez, who, like I said, about to be 30, shoulder, forearm problem, strikeout rate not going the right direction. Bad team behind him. I don't think Minnesota's a great team, and there's been talks that they might continue to trade pieces. The poll odds are just, they don't spend money. So I don't know how much you can really expect out of Pablo Lopez in 2026.
I think there's no doubt that you understand from the injury history, you understand why he's fallen. From the success of what he's done, I'm not sure it's 100% justified. I would say he is the more likely guy of him or Joe Ryan to be traded. Apologies if there's been something that's happened. You got winter meetings around the corner. I don't want to date ourselves too much on this, but I think there's a possibility he could be sold off. And if that's the case, I don't think it's the most ridiculous thing on the planet. He was both beneficial. I mean, in his short stint of games that he pitched this year, again, he had a sub-3 ERA. He had a sub-3 ERA both at home and on the road. The things that are most important to me are going to be his health and hearing the health. That's it. If we get a full, clean bill of health, I think you can jump back in, because he had a decrease by a little over a mile per hour on his four-seam fastball, which you don't want to see. But it didn't get hit harder. His sweeper held hitters to a 133 batting average, and the year prior it was 239, and the expected numbers look even better. So I still think some of the pitchability is there. I think there's still some upside, but he has to be where he's at right now. Bill of health is the most important thing, and secondary is going to be, where does he get moved off? He is falling in drafts. This is a very, very popular name last season, and this might be one of the ones that's from a production versus time missed standpoint, the production's telling us a story that hey, if you get 180 innings out of what he did this past year, or even if he regresses to be a 3.5 ERA guy, he's going to be worth more than the cost that you're putting in. So he is falling in drafts, but maybe he's someone you can swoop up. I don't know if you will be super interested in the next guy though. At number 6, this is a player that was going to hit free agency, but then they signed their tendered contract to come back with an ADP of 148 this season after going inside the top 65. He was actually one spot higher than Pablo Lopez. It's Shota Imanaga. Imanaga, with a 3.7 ERA this past year, did pitch 25 games, 144 innings pitched. His strikeouts, they kind of cratered. At least he still didn't walk a lot of guys, gave up a lot more hard hit and barreled contact, but he is back with the Cubs this year, and his cost is more than doubled down. So what do you think? Do you think this is a justified? There's no doubt that he is absolutely cratering in drafts. Is he going to be someone you're interested in at all?
This price is really a reflection of the market getting sharper than it has been over the years. Every year, I think players get a little bit better. He has a sub-1 whip, and he's going as the 45th pitcher off the board. You don't usually see that, but the strikeouts are kind of the be-all and end-all here for me. He went from 25% to 20%. It might surprise a lot of people to know that Imanaga's already 32. He came over when he was 30 years old, so he's not a young guy. He's not Yamamoto or Sasaki, young 20s, mid-20s. He's already kind of pushing it a little bit, and if the strikeouts are already going that way, I'm really not that interested in him. He gave up, like you mentioned, a lot of hard contact, 1.93 homer 9. this season, 144 innings. You have 31 homers. He had a 486 FIP. Those are really startling numbers. The stuff was already only a 97, went down to 94. They weren't chasing as much. Batters were chasing 37% of the time last year, or 36. Now this year it was 31. Swinging strike rate went down from 15%, which was an elite number, down to 11, which is kind of whatever. So there's a lot of things going in the wrong direction for Shota Imanaga. A good friend of mine, Thomas Nestico, you guys probably know him better as TJ Stats on Twitter. He was worried about Imanaga last year heading into the season. He kind of was able to hold it together, but I think he's holding it together with string at this point. And next season, it's going to be a pretty dark year for Imanaga, I think, or for his fantasy managers anyway.
And I'll tell you, so a couple interesting things. Imanaga was worse at home. He had about a 4 ERA at home, which I think concerns some people. He lost a full mile per hour on his fastball. That at his age is actually maybe one of the most concerning things. He lost some pretty significant whiff percentages, specifically on his split finger, which he throws over 30% of the time. But all of that paired with two ridiculous things on the homers that you talked about. He gave up 27 of his 31 homers to right-handed hitters. Listen, obviously there were more innings. There were 3 times as many innings pitched against righties than lefties, but still that number is ridiculous against righties. So he clearly has a problem with his approach versus righties. And, if you look, the thing that he's doing against right-handers is he is throwing, it looks like, that splitter even more. That splitter is heavily against right-handers and not against lefties, that might be a problem. But also, more importantly here, where I look at a player and I go, is this something that's so abnormal? Is this fixable? Maybe, but maybe not with the stuff declining. Yeah. Of those 31 homers, only 7 he gave up from March to June. So that means, what's the rough math here? 24 homers he gave up from July through September. A ridiculous number. He gave up 9, 5, and then 10 between those 2 months. And they obviously equated to like ridiculous overinflated home run numbers. We're telling you a lot of stuff with like, okay, so then what's the answer? The answer might be with the declining velo, a ballpark that he doesn't pitch as well in. He can't not give up homers to right-handed hitters. I don't know if there are any anomalies, and maybe this is a problem, and maybe he is somebody that is just a straight avoid, even at the cost of how far he's fallen in the 150s. Maybe he's someone you still just don't want to buy into.
I mean, look at the range around him. It's similar to Lopez. Ryan Pepio is right in that range. Sporer on our live show, that was the player he highlighted that he's targeting. Drew Rasmussen, going back to the Trop this year. I've always liked Rasmussen. Rodon, Sandy Alcantara, another year removed. So you're passing up on a lot of goodness to take Imanaga, who is very far from a sure thing at this point.
Yeah, 24 also of those homers came off of the 4-seam fastball. The other 7 all came off of the split finger. So, I highlighted the split finger a little bit, even though it didn't have like a high batting average, but still like 7 homers off of a 31% usage pitch is not good. And then what's he doing? He's going back to the fastball, which dudes are just, they're tanking. They're tanking again. So it's not great. Here's another big one. This actually, I think, is this and the next one are the two biggest numerical changes between them. And if you were an Aaron Nola guy, you're going to have a hard time finding him in draft, especially in the draft boards this year, because last season he was going 72 before the season started on the aggregate ADP. This year he is outside the top 200, 213 to be exact. He had a 6 ERA last year, missed a ton of time, only pitched 94 innings. WHIP was way up. The expected numbers are better, but it's still over 4, which would be the worst of his career. More barreled contact. Aaron Nola, a big faller in drafts. Buy or sell?
I'm willing to consider it. I'm not gonna commit to he's a target or he's not, but the price is really, really good for him. His injuries last year, which caused him to miss some time and perhaps contributed to the poor results, they were both ankle injuries. I don't think I'm missing anything. It was 2 ankle injuries, one initial one, then he re-aggravated it. I don't think there was anything shoulder, forearm, elbow, or anything like that. So that gives me some hope. He did kind of pick things up in the second half of the season. There were still some stinkers, but he ended the year with 8 innings of 1 run balled, 9 strikeouts. So he ended on a strong note at least. And a lot of the supporting numbers were a lot better than that 6 ERA suggests. His FIP was about the same as Shota Imanaga. 4.58. I think Imanaga was 4.57, but the strikeouts are still about where they've been. The Command is still fairly solid. I think that there is room for him to bounce back here. And at the price, he only has to be he's your sixth pitcher at that point. Maybe he's your fifth, sixth pitcher. I think it's an area where I can buy in because the guys going around him, again, that's kind of where I go on the evaluation. Who am I passing up to take him? It's like Mackenzie Gore, Zach Gallen, Andrew Abbott, Connolly Early. I can talk myself into Aaron Nola being the best of those guys and kind of having a bit of a bounce back season. He's done the odd even year thing, which I don't know if I want to read too much into, but he's due for a good one. If you want to add that to the pros.
I will actually, that was something I was going to say, goofy. I'm just going to list it. And since 2018, here are his ERAs year by year. 18, 2.37, 19, 3.87, 20, 3.28, 21, 4.63, 2022, bounce back with a 3.25, 2023, 4.46, 2024, 3.57, and this year a 6. It has been, I mean, what is that? Like 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's 8 years of every other year. And we are, if you want to play that fun game, we're on the positive year side. We're on the do year side if you want to play that. So sorry, continue.
No, that's mostly it. Like, I don't think he's going to be somebody like when we start making those videos, 5 players to target for your team, he won't be on my lists. But if he's a guy that I end up with as my 5th or 6th pitcher, I'll be totally fine with that. There's a chance he bounces back. He's pitching for a good team still. So I can be talked into it.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I don't know if I have a take on this one outside to say that, guess what? He is absolutely cratered in drafts. I'm a little bit worried that we could just be done. He's getting older. Things are progressing in a bad way. He wasn't able to finish through the year. He didn't have a single month where he was good this past year. So I just want to point out, it's not like, oh, hey guys, he was like good in April and August, but he really sucked the other 3. No, every single month he stunk. The best ERA he had in a single month is 4.85. And I know you could be like, well, ERA doesn't mean anything. Okay. Well, he had 1 month where he had like a 1.02 whip. Every other whip was like absolutely atrocious. Wasn't good. He was bad at home. He was bad on the road. He's lost a little bit of velo. He's giving up more barreled contact. He's starting to walk a little bit more. Like, what's the redeeming factor here across the board? He did get hit a little bit more versus some of the expected numbers. So like his curveball he throws 274 average against, the expected was 243. So there's some regressive things that could be better, but at best you're getting the value of him. This is a deserved player that is falling. Aaron Nola is on the back half of what is good. And you even said Conley Early, I'd rather take the upside of a guy like Early at this point than get a mid-4s ERA at best Aaron Nola. And I think that's where we're at. So he is falling and I'm buying it.
I get it. The only last thing I'll say in his favor is that September, October, as much as the ERA was still 5, which was an improvement over the rest of the season. His FIP was 360 and he had a 25% strikeout rate in September and October. So he did finish with what was his best month, even though it wasn't, to your point, a great month. He finished better than he had looked throughout the year. So I'm still kind of hemming and hawing on him a little bit, but he's a fine pick where he's going, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, he used to just be this like really great elite guy. Since 2020, his K percentage has never improved, and any single year after that, it has either gotten worse or for the last 2 years, it stayed the same at 24%. Another pitcher that was going inside the top 100 last year, this is the last of the pitchers we're going to talk about, maybe is kind of out of sight, out of mind for a lot of people, but you want to know what? He was a guy that was seen as like the 5 of the Mount Rushmore, you have to add an extra one, of Mariners pitchers, and it's Bryce Miller. Bryce Miller was seen in a really good light after a 2024 where he pitched a 2.94 ERA in 180 innings with a sub-1 whip and 171 strikeouts. Now his K percentage was only like 24%, but like we're looking at him like, hey, is it Brian Wu? Is it Bryce Miller? And when you look at the ADPs, he was going 77th in drafts last year. The single furthest drop to 233. He is almost not being drafted after a year where he had a 5.68 ERA, also suffered some massive injuries, only pitched 90 innings. His K percentage dropped from 24 to 18%. He walked more. The ERA was tanked. The whip was over 1.4. Everything completely fell apart for Bryce Miller. So that is why he has fallen in drafts. Do you buy the fall on Bryce Miller?
I understand it for sure when you're factoring in the elbow problems. It was 2 separate elbow ailments this past year. And also the fact that he is a home park merchant. He's a Safeco Field T-Mobile merchant throughout his career. Home ERA is 3.34. On the road, it's 4.77, which is, I mean, unless it's the playoffs and it's the game one of the ALCS where he'll cook the Blue Jays. Other than that, on the road, he was not very good this past season. Strikeouts went down. I think a lot of it can be chalked up to the injuries, but how healthy is he going to be this upcoming season? And how comfortable am I starting him for those 16 or 17 times where he's not in Seattle? I understand the fall, and I don't think I really want to pay it. Now, like I mentioned, he performed well in the playoffs, and that could be something that's like, okay, he was healthy, he's fixed now, he'll be fine. There's not a lot of strong data points. His stuff is about average. He doesn't get a ton of swing and miss. I'm worried about half of his starts to begin with. I just think he's better left for somebody else, but at his price, I could see myself, similarly to Nola, being talked into it. If it's him or, Hurston Waldrep or, a couple different guys, Matthew Boyd, I could be talked into it, but he is far from a target.
Yeah. I think he might be a bounce back candidate, if I'm being honest with you. I think there's a little bit of like scrap and throw out the year. That may not hold. He's a tinkerer. I've actually talked to Bryce Miller like every year for the last 3 years, and every single season it's like he's doing something new. And maybe that needs to stop at some point, because I think you can actually also look at some of what he was doing last season to be the problem. Specifically, the sinker. The sinker really regressed. He was throwing it the second most in 2024. In 2025, he still, percentages was pretty close. It came his third most thrown pitch. But check this out. Year prior, 248 average against his sinker. This year, 328. More important than just batting average, 91 average exit velocity against his sinker in 2024, 96.1 this past year. He got absolutely smashed on his sinker. So something's going to have to change there. Plus, he kind of scrapped his sweeper, had a little bit better whiff rate. I think that with the ballpark factors, maybe can help elicit less barreled and hard hit contact, and we can up the K percentage. But he's absolutely tanked in drafts from the previous season. He might be someone that's on a bounce back, but it's a risk, and he's a good maybe SP7 or something like that. But he has fallen in drafts year over year. If you were not aware, he is someone that is not from 25 to 26, someone that is going to be someone you're going to remember as a player that, I drafted him before. Why am I not getting him this year? Because everything stunk. 2 players left. These are hitters. These are big names in their space. And I think this kind of falls into the most, what are we doing with these guys now territory. Coming in at number 9 on the list is one of the most popular catching prospects who has fallen off the board, Adley Rutschman. He was, now, I have to give the caveat here. Try not to do catchers in this because NFBC absolutely overinflates catchers. So you know that. So the ADP I'm going to give you off of NFBC is inflated, but that's going to tell a weird story. It's 162. So catchers go higher in these formats. So in a standard catching format this year, you are probably going to see Adley Rutschman more outside the top 200. He was going, according in single catcher ADPs last season on FantasyPros before the year started, 60th. So that was like number 2, probably number 2 catcher, maybe number 3 in a lot of places. Just everything fell apart. He's had a regressive batting average for 3 straight years. He was injured. Power numbers kind of fell off. OBP's completely tanked over the last 2 seasons. He is walking and not striking out a bunch, and you actually still see some of the underlying metrics there, but it's equating to a whole bunch of nothing. So Adley Rutschman is free this year. He has completely fallen in drafts. Do you think it's justified, or is he someone that can bounce back?
So I mentioned Merrill earlier as the guy I took in my first draft of the year. Rutschman was also a guy that I took in that draft. I was where is it?
Was this 2-catcher?
Round. This was a 2-catcher draft. Yeah, most of my leagues are NFBC, but it was the 12th round. With Rutschman, I feel like he'll probably be in that 150 to 200 range, and he feels like a really good bounce back candidate. So he dealt with injuries last year, of course, cost him time with the abdomen, the oblique. It was a head injury. He was all kinds of banged up last year. But the numbers below the surface didn't really suffer. He still walked 11% of the time. 15% strikeout rate. The barrel rate is not amazing, 7.5%, but that's what he's been. 38 hard hit, ditto. It's literally been that every year of his career, 36 to 38% hard hit. So nothing changed in the batted ball data. He was chasing less. 30% chase rate down to 22. Better contact rate, 89 to 91 in the zone. Swinging strike rate went from 6.8, which was already really good, down to 5.4%. And I think something that hurt the counting stats as a whole, and it hurt Baltimore, was that they were just injured as a team last year. They could not stay healthy. The team was awful. They don't have pitching, but that's another conversation. The offense just couldn't stay healthy. So I think you give him a full year, you play 120, 130 games, we can see Adley bounce back, and the projections expect it. Steamer has him down for 17 homers, a 255 batting average, and a 115 WRC+. I think if you are punting catchers, he could be your second catcher in a two-catcher format, and even if you're punting catchers in a one-catcher league, which you probably should be doing anyway, you could take Adley Rutschman in like the 17th round, and you might end up with a top 5 catcher again. Would not be at all surprised. He's still 27, still a top prospect, and I think the Orioles are still going to be invested in him.
Yeah, whether he's traded or he stays, I think there's something to pay attention to the ballpark. You know, he's a switch hitter, and the right hand, so the side for right-handed hitters has become a little less hitter friendly. The left-hand side has become a little bit home run happy. He hit his best batting average was as a right-handed hitter, but it was about 70 points lower than the year before. So, and he had under 200 at home. So what I'm getting at is like the home ballpark factor as a guy that he doesn't, I mean, at least he's regressed as a guy that puts the ball in the air and pulls it. You know, so if he has a good launch angle, but he lost 5 degrees on it this year, and he lost, I think, about 7%. He was an elite 23.2% pulled air guy in 2024. So that means he got the ball in the air, pulled it, and that would equate to good homers. This year, that was around 16%, and he lost his launch angle. I think those are things you can equate to injuries, because a lot of the other the stuff, barrels the ball about the same, hits the ball about the same amount, average EV is the same. Like a lot of the stuff is the same. There are a lot of injuries out there. And I do wonder if there's a little bit of ballpark and if he can bounce back. So with that, I think in a lot of places, he's actually, the fall is value, except the name value could push him up. If he's healthy, I would just warn you that this is a player that is falling in drafts, that could skyrocket back up if there's some positive takes on it. But I think I'm in agreement with you that he's someone that we can invest in, but there's no doubt about, compared to where he was last year, he's completely tanked. The last player on the list, I had to bring him up because you want to talk about year in and year out of a player that is falling in drafts. It is always this guy, but then he comes back up. Will he pop back up this year? Mike Trout. Mike Trout, 90th last year. But I want to point out he was going way later. He was like 130, 140, but then there's health. Mike Trout's going to DH. Things are looking good. I ruin it. He ended as a top 100 player. This year, his ADP is around 198 in Draft Champions. To be fair, he did have probably the most at bats he's had this past season since 2019. 26 homers, couple stolen bases. Stopped running after it looked like maybe he's running more. His batting average looks like it is completely tanked. He hit 220. Expected batting average for the first time did not say a better story. The year before, he only hit 220 with an expected of 270. This year, he hit 232 with an expected batting average about the same. More importantly than anything else, strikeouts are ridiculous. 32%. That completely fell apart. So Mike Trout clearly has fallen in drafts. I'm more interested, do you think he is going to rise again to a big, great degree if we are sold that, more DHing, he's healthy, or are we finally done with Mike Trout?
So I was going through some tweets of mine and searching names just to see what I said about players last year and stuff. And Mike Trout, I put in Mike Trout's name last night just to see, and it was in reply to a Ryan Bloomfield tweet about how Mike Trout had gotten more expensive from October to November. And I replied with that classic made it through November healthy bump for Mike Trout. Mm-hmm. And I think it's because everybody wants to draft Mike Trout. In the back of their mind, Mike Trout is a Hall of Famer. He's a superstar player in his peak, one of the best players ever, yada, yada, yada. People want to draft those players. It's why you'll see guys go higher on Garrett Cole than they should, and Clayton Kershaw every year, Scherzer, whoever it is. And Trout is exactly that same type of player where you want him to have one more season. Maybe he's got one more in the tank, but I don't think he does anymore. And I've been beating that drum the last couple of years of Mike Trout probably has one more year. This year he stayed healthy, 556 plate appearances. And on the player rater, he was right beside Austin Hayes, who had 150 fewer plate appearances than him. And I think that kind of tells the whole story. He strikes out 32% of the time. The 26 home runs are nice, but that kind of strikeout rate is unbelievable. And I think he's completely changed as a hitter in his quote-unquote older age. He sold out for power more as he got older, but also the swing rate is really low at this point. 38% swing rate. It's the 5th lowest in all of baseball. I don't know who he is as a hitter anymore, and I'm not sure that he knows who he is as a hitter anymore. I think he can still hit 20 homers, but it'll come with a low batting average in a bad lineup, and like you mentioned, people will still want to push him up. All it takes is one guy in every room to believe in Mike Trout and to push him up a round or two past ADP. Yeah. And at this stage in the game, people still there's probably one guy in every room who's like, Mike Trout, you know what? I'm going to do it.
I'm right here, Joe. I'm right here. I was the guy last year, but let me point out something. He returned value on the big case that I was making when he was going in the 150s, the 140s and stuff like that. It's hard to argue 26 homers. I mean, I guess maybe I need to backtrack a little bit. Like the batting average didn't really necessarily help, but 64 runs, 73 RBI, 26 homers. He played games. Like, I guess the theory of my initial take was kind of there, but you mentioned the profile of who he is has really changed. And the biggest thing I can tell, because I agree with you that he's like selling out for more power, is it's funny, his run value against like fastballs, forcing fastballs specifically, is uniquely high. It was a 15 run value. That's like elite in baseball. It's because of what it looks like what he's doing. It looks like he is attempting to try to hit some of the secondary stuff, and it's only working off of fastballs. Either all of his homers are coming off of fastballs, but also his K percentage. So maybe this makes more sense how I'm saying it. He had a 34% K percentage against four-seam fastballs. For perspective, 16% the year prior. So I think what it looks like is he is becoming a reactionary fastball hitter where the Ks are going higher. He is crushing and making, not just contact, but he's making impact off of fastballs. But it's done in this really poor way where he's striking out more, losing batting average, because I think he is attempting to sell out for some of the secondary stuff. He had an expected batting average 30 points higher against breaking pitches and 50 points higher against off speed. So like he's underperforming against those pitches. And I think that is kind of being viewed in this reactionary fastball space. So all of that is just a bunch of conjecture that I'm throwing out here. Listen, he has changed as a hitter. He's striking out a lot more. The fastball to breaking pitch stuff looks weird. He doesn't stay healthy. He doesn't run. There's still big, impactful bat that's floating out there. But for us to predict that it's any more than 25 homers with no stolen bases, 75-75, it's silly. The fall makes sense of where he is. I just don't think he's going to rise again. The Mike Trout rising, I think, ends this year. We are done with him officially going low and flying up boards. That is officially done. He does belong down here. He has fallen in drafts. And do you think it's deserved? Love to hear your Mike Trout takes in the comments below. Who else is falling in drafts that maybe you don't buy or that you think needs to fall a whole bunch more? And what was the one on this that hit you the hardest? You can drop comments below on YouTube. We'd love to see it. We'd love to react to it as these 10 players are falling in drafts. What do you guys think? Make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel, youtube.com/FantasyPros MLB. Make sure you check out all the tools as well. And we want you guys to be involved because the Fantasy Pros MLB channel is ready to start locking in. We got the Twitch channel where leading off is going to be again this year, twitch.tv/FantasyPros. And you can join us on Discord. MLB is going to be popping off. So make sure you're there, fantasypros.com/chat, completely free. Get in there, hang out with us. We'd love to have you. That is going to do it for the episode. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us. For Joe Orrico, I'm Chris Welsh. We'll talk to you next time right here on Fantasy Pros.